Welcome back. So as you saw in the last video of the Sun Saturn series, we talked about the mythology of Shani or Saturn. We talked about the story behind how Saturn came into existence and what happened to him, all the injustice that happened to him, and in the end how Sun kind of understood the truth behind everything and gave him what was rightfully his. Now, today we'll talk about the Saturn return period of a person's life. Now, what is Saturn return, right? In a person's natal chart, Saturn is at a specific position. Every 29 and a half years, Saturn comes back to that same position, and that is what we call Saturn return, okay? Now, it's a very important time in a person's life because the first Saturn return that happens in a person's life is kind of like a coming of age, right? You're growing up. Saturn return is the time when, like I said, since Saturn, goes around the chart one entire circle, and then it comes back to the place where it was, then the person was born. So this happens during the 29th, the 59th, and the 88th year, or in some cases a few months before or after that particular year. Think of it as three 29-year periods, right? In any person's life, the 29th birthday normally denotes the development of a new consciousness. And you will always see this, right? And individuality is born, right? At this time, it will culminate the results and the lessons from the first 28 years, which I like to refer to as a combination of the soul's past life karma, which it has brought into this life, and the parents' karma. Because for a child, the parents are the most influential people. They hold the reins to the subconscious of this child, right? Also note that most of the time, a person's first Saturn return, coincidentally, it's the same as the parents' second Saturn return, right? Most of the time. Hence, what happens is when that person is going through their first Saturn return, the parents get the karmic results of the way they raise their child. Okay, so during the first Saturn return, existing structures which don't serve a purpose anymore in the person's life, they will all break down, right? So, and that does, because when anything existing breaks down, it causes panic, and possibly the person will go into depression, right? On the flip side, it also teaches to become independent, right? The person starts thinking about having a family, about putting their roots down, bearing children, right? Now, think back to the mythology for a second, and this is the reason why I went through the story part of it first. Saturn himself endured insults, depression, prejudice, laziness, and a sense of being directionless, right? Because he didn't get any direction from his father. Now, after the turning point of the story, which can be, I think that would be like metaphorically likened to the Saturn return in a person's life, right? In an individual's life. Shani gets his rightful place where he is able to showcase his innate abilities and talents, right? And what are his innate talents? It's patience, hard work, right? True to the story, just like that story, the house Saturn is placed in will, in early years of a person's life, be a hard area for that person, right? They won't be able to understand it. There'll be no direction there. But as they near maturity, and with the perseverance, when they overcome the difficulties in that area, right? So during your Saturn return, you will mostly face problems in areas that are pertaining to the house Saturn is in, or the areas of the houses that Saturn is directly aspecting, full aspect, and also if there are any planets that are hardly, like in a hard conjunction. Now, having said that, your question now would be, what are your tools right, to cruise through a difficult Saturn return? It's a very good question. I can tell you without one shred of doubt, the only way that you can get through a challenging or a difficult Saturn return time would be to shed your ego, right? When we undergo depression or anger, when Saturn breaks down existing structures which we were so dependent on, right? The one thing that stops us from realizing the greater good is our ego. And ego is symbolic, it's the sun, right? So if we don't shed the ego, we never get to the point where we stop blaming outside elements and start looking inwards, right? Because all the answers are inside you, okay? That's when Shani becomes your greatest benefic, okay? And you will see the ultimate harvest, blessings, and everything that follows that, right? Now, astrologically, the placement of Saturn and Sun in the chart in the same house or in hard aspect is not considered as a good thing, right? Because that age-old enmity between the Sun and Father, it comes to the surface. And but then again, if you can let go of your ego and if you can understand what Shani or Saturn is trying to tell you, that's when it becomes the biggest blessing of your life, more than any other planet in the chart. And this is something that I firmly believe in, right? Especially when people are 29 years old, and then they see that this breakdown of their existing life is happening, right? People sometimes go through breakups, they go through job changes, they go through residence changes, they go to a different place altogether, or they get married, or huge changes around that time frame of the person's life. Now, some of the times people will be like, why are all these changes happening in this couple of years? Well, the whole idea is coming of age, right? Saturn has made one big circle through your chart and it's come back to the point where it started. It's ready to start on the next journey, right? So it's going to set you up with all the tools that you need. If you look at it this way, then it's not a difficult time period for you, right? It's going to be easy to traverse it. So that's the main idea behind a Saturn return, right? And that's the reason why the story is important, because if you see in the story as well, Saturn was initially going through all those hardships and he completely lost it in the very end. And then, he kind of understood that his father was not to blame. His father didn't even know the truth. So then he kind of gets, everything that was rightfully his, but he had to get to that point of suffering to get that, right? So, it's not true that we all have to go through that amount of suffering to get where we need to be. The shortcut is to give up on your ego, right? Not holding on to unhealthy ego is the way to traverse any Shani or Saturn transits, right? Because all Saturn's trying to do is, it's like a strict teacher. If you've had one of those in school or in college, they don't really like fun and games. They may not laugh a lot, they may not be all playful, but they do want what's best for you, and they have a way of saying what they want to say, right? So it's like strict. So the only way you can understand those lessons is if you first pull away that veil of ego and anger, and then you try to understand at the root, what is this planet trying to teach you, and then it becomes very easy to traverse it. So that is about Saturn return. Now the next video, when you come back, will be about the psychology of Sun and Saturn aspects. And it's very interesting to see from the mythology, Sun and Saturn are, they have this enmity going on. So when you see that in a person's chart, it's very interesting to see how it plays out. So let's look at that in the next video. And as always, I request you to subscribe to the link that's below this video. And I hope you come back next week to continue on with the series and sound off your comments. Let me know what you think. And let's keep going on this journey together. Thank you, guys.